So welcome to Excel for Busy Salespeople, Lesson 4, Lookup Tables. So a couple of quick things. Here we have a table, and what we want to do is look up, based on the zip code, what territory this account is in. So the first thing we had to do was we had to go out onto the internet and get a list of zip codes for, in this case, my company covers Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So we have this data set defined, and then for each zip code, we decided where it based on that territory. So once you have that data put together, the question is, how can I look up this value inside of this table? Now, Excel provides a couple of different formulas for doing that, and something new in the lessons now, we have a tab called Formulas. So all this is just a blow up to show you here's the structure, here's the data that we're getting from it, and then how we're finding this information. So in this case, we're going to start off with the VLOOKUP. It's the most common one, and more people are familiar with it. The other is index match. We'll come back to that in a minute. So starting with the lookup table, I want to find out what this zip code is defined as my territory. So you can see over here sort of the answer because I've already provided it, but how would you generate that? So I'm just going to start off with equals V lookup, and I'll press tab, and now it's going to say what's the lookup value, lookup table. I could also use the wizard, and it'll give me the exact same set of selections. So the value that I'm looking up is right here. What is the table or array? So where am I looking that data up from? So in this case, I'm going to click on the zip tab. I'm going to press Control and up arrow gets me to the beginning. Control Shift End. It got me a little too much. Let me try the left arrow and the bottom arrow. So there we go. So in this case, it'll be A2 to D4870. Now, thinking ahead, when I go to copy this formula up and down that column, if I don't change this from its relative reference to its absolute reference, it will cause me trouble later. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to absolute by pressing the F4 key. And again, put my mouse anywhere in here, also press F4. So the next thing it's asking me, which column has the number that you want to give back? Well, in this case, the territories are all in column D, so the answer there will be column 4. And then this is very important, the range lookup. For all of these things where I'm looking up a specific value and expecting a specific return, I always want it to be false. True is for the nearest value. You see examples of that all the time online of, if it's between value A and value B and it's a range of numbers like a letter grade, then everything between 90 and 100 gets an A, and between 80 and 89 gets a B. That's one way that you use that, so you don't have to define every possible grade in between there. You just say if it's in this range, then do a false look or do a true lookup, and then that will tell me what the closest result to that lookup. But again, for us, we want exact return, so we're going to choose false and OK. And so we get our answer. That's going to be Houston. So to use the second example, the index match, so I want to break this up into two parts. The more complicated the formula, the better off you are trying to break it down into multiple pieces. So the first part, let's look at the match portion of this function. So I'm going to start off equals, we're going to type in match. What are we going to look up? We're going to look up this value right here. Where are we going to look it up? And so I'm going to go to my zip code list. Now, before I was looking up inside this entire table. Here, I'm only looking for the value in this row. So here I've chosen A2 to A4870. Again, I'm going to make sure that value stays as I copy and paste the formula. So that tells me that the answer, again, look at how this works out. This tells me that the answer is on row 3,314. Okay? So now the next portion of this is the index portion. So what I want to know is, all right, so I will start here, equals, and I'm going to choose index. I'll use the first form of the equation. So where am I looking up the information? So in this case, it's going to be the array. I'm going to start here, and I will go down to the bottom here. Now the row number is going to be the result of this function here. So for this instant, I'm just going to click L31, and column number is 0, and I'm going to click OK. And that tells me Houston. So now I know that the formula piece by piece works. So the next thing I can do is copy this portion of the formula. Just cut it right there. I'm going to go into here and just replace L31 with that function. Click OK, and there's the answer. So it looks much more confusing until you realize it's just doing two things at once. The first thing it's figuring out is what row, here in this portion here, what row is going to return this value. So this value is on row 3,314. And then if I go down to row 3,314, what value do I pick up? And in this case, it's Houston. So a little more confusing. Many people show that index match is actually faster than VLOOKUP, but you need a pretty big table before it significantly impacts your computation time. So you either have to have a really big table or a really slow computer. But certainly if you're doing very large spreadsheets, take that into account, that over time that will impact how fast you can calculate and add data to your spreadsheet. One other thing that I would like to point out, when you're going here in your formulas tab, it's very helpful when you're trying to figure out, especially when something's going wrong, it's very helpful to use this evaluate formula button. So I'm going to click evaluate formula, and it shows the order that Excel is evaluating it. So the first thing it's doing is telling me I'm going to figure out what G31 is. Okay, so G31 in this case is 77066. Now it's evaluating this phrase, match. So evaluate that portion, and that's going to return row 3,314. And now it's evaluating what shows up if I go and look on the 3,314th row of column D. Evaluate, and of course you get the answer is Houston. So there you go. Also, I have a little bonus here at the end. I want to show you guys some really useful tools, again, for a salesperson when you're trying to create and set up your territories. So for those of you who downloaded the zip file out of the Dropbox, one of the files that's in there is the 04A zip code Southwest. So basically this is the tables that I used when I was creating my own territory definitions. And you can see these are the links that I used when I created them. So I'm going to click on these links and show you where I downloaded the data from. Again, if you downloaded the zip file, you already have at least the data from here and here, but it's also very helpful to know where the raw data came from. So the first link here, the maps.huge.info, that brings you to this link here. And you can see it's very helpful to go in, use the 3-digit codes to define around your larger territory areas, and then you can see as you zoom in, they get more and more detailed. You can also look up and see if I wanted to go 77066, where would that be on the map? Of course, that's going to be down here in Houston where we were working earlier. So that's one tool that's included in there. Another one is this link here. So here you can download, again, this was all the zip codes in the United States. You can go to a specific state here. Let's say you pulled up Texas. This is where you can pull up lists specific to your state. Also, the links have population data and census data, so it's kind of interesting. So these next two work really well if you can use them together. So I'm going to start off here with the United States zipcodes.org. There's some really neat tricks you can do with this. So one of the most useful things is, again, you're trying to define a territory. So let's choose a territory like San Antonio here. So let's zoom in on San Antonio, pick a zip code that's pretty close to downtown. So we'll pick here 78205, 78205. Do a quick search on it. So now we're going to use the find zips in a radius. So we want to choose, again, 78205. Let's choose something that's about 25 miles and submit. So 25 miles of San Antonio, Texas, 78205. And it tells me there are 82 zip codes that fall within that range. So I could now copy this data, put it in my own spreadsheet, go into here, find those zip codes, and put them in a territory that I'm going to define as San Antonio. Back to here. Also, it allows me, you know, something's right on the verge. I can use it. I can zoom in and out. I can choose to add that into my zone, or I can choose to take it out. Again, the reason as salespeople that we even care about having a territory defined is, what does it make sense to drive to? How far away, you know, just to call it in my territory means that I can reasonably make a sales call there, or if I'm traveling with a principal, get a principal there and it not take all day. So, and then of course when you have adjacent territories, like where does San Antonio start and Austin start. So that's another one of the, as you're going through and defining your territories, you just have to decide which zip codes belong to which territory. So again, you can bring these into a list and then copy those over here into a program like ZMaps where I can create my own map, and then I can import. I can go in here and import a list of zip codes, and it will highlight those zip codes on my map. So doing that right now is outside of the scope of the course, but it can be done. It's a useful tool to have, and I wanted to point it out to you.